Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're tackling a genuinely fascinating challenge right at the intersection of technology and human behavior. How on earth do we get reliable data from incredibly large communities? I mean, think about it for a second. We live in a world literally overflowing with user-generated info. But let's be honest, humans are, well, we're kind of messy. We guess, we exaggerate, sometimes we completely misremember. So how do you organize all that chaos and make the collective input actually useful? It's a lot like those crowdsourced traffic apps, right? You have to balance people angrily reporting a traffic jam with the actual GPS speed data to figure out what's really happening on the road. And that is the exact scale of the problem tackled by Codatta. It's a framework entirely dedicated to defining community-driven data sourcing protocols. When you really boil it down, it all comes down to this fundamental battle: opinion versus truth. How does a community actually decide what's real? This is the absolute core narrative tension we have to resolve when dealing with data from the crowd. On one hand, you've got subjective thought, what people feel, what they guess, what they firmly believe based on their own isolated experiences. But then, on the other hand, you have objective reality, the cold, hard, verifiable facts. Now, when you ask a massive community for data, you are inevitably going to get this swirling, chaotic mix of both. So how do you filter it? How do you actually know what to trust? Okay, let's dive right into this. The foundation to solving this whole mess is community-driven data sourcing. But listening, this isn't just about throwing a quick poll up on a website. No, in the context of Codatta, it represents a highly structured, formalized protocol for extracting meaningful info from a totally decentralized network of participants. A protocol is essentially a strict set of rules. So Codatta is defining the rules of engagement here. It's creating this structural blueprint that dictates exactly how data should be submitted, processed, and validated when it comes from a massive community. The goal? Making sure the resulting dataset is actually worth something. But here's the thing. Having a protocol is really only half the battle. You can have the most elegant, logically perfect rulebook ever written down, but it means absolutely nothing if you can't transition it into practice. Moving from a theoretical protocol down to the actual real world requires a specialized mechanism. It requires a vital bridge, an engine, really, to take those rules of community data sourcing and enforce them in a live environment, where real people are submitting real, messy information. Enter the CAA implementation. CAA actually stands for Community Action Architecture. The source text explicitly highlights CAA as the specific vehicle that takes Codatta from just a concept to a functioning reality. Think of CAA as the heavy-duty software engine or the operational framework doing all the heavy lifting. It's the practical, on-the-ground reality of those theoretical rules we just talked about. Basically, CAA is what actually interacts with the community, collects the inputs, and applies the logic required to separate the signal from the noise. Which naturally leads us to ask, how exactly does CAA implement this community-driven data sourcing? What are the micro-mechanics at play here? I mean, if CAA is the engine doing the heavy lifting, what do the gears inside actually look like? To understand how it solves that initial problem of opinion versus truth, we really need to look closely at the specific strategy CAA uses to process this massive influx of community data. Well, the answer lies in what the source material describes as two distinct tracks. And the brilliance of this implementation is that it doesn't just try to shove all community data through a single one-size-fits-all filter. It completely recognizes that human input is wildly varied in its nature. So by splitting its data gathering into two separate parallel paths, the system can actually handle different types of information appropriately, processing each track in a way that maximizes its unique value. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. On the left side, we have heuristic-based opinion. Heuristics are essentially mental shortcuts, the fast, intuitive gut feelings of a community. It's a group's educated guess or their collective sentiment. Then, on the right side, acting as a massive counterweight, is evidence-backed ground truth. This is the slow, rigid anchor of the system that demands hard, objective proof. So the implementation is completely separating the fast, intuitive human opinion from the slow, verifiable, factual evidence. Now, the secret here is that these two tracks do not compete at all. They are actually designed to work closely in tandem. Think about it. If you only rely on hard evidence, your system is painfully slow, and you might completely miss out on emerging trends that the community just intuitively senses. But if you rely solely on opinion, well, you just float right away from reality. The CAA implementation functions specifically because it captures the full, wide scope of the community's intuitive knowledge and then strategically pairs it with the solid anchor of verifiable evidence. So why go through all the trouble of building this complex two-track system? Well, the source material sums it up perfectly. It is entirely designed, quote, to enhance quality and trust. That is the ultimate goal of the entire whole shebang, the Codatta framework and the CAA implementation. By carefully balancing that subjective human element with objective evidence, the resulting data achieves a level of quality and trustworthiness that, frankly, neither track could ever possibly achieve on its own. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, it leaves us with an incredibly provocative question. If a protocol perfectly balances human opinion with hard evidence, is absolute trust in community data finally possible? It is an absolutely wild concept to ponder. By formalizing the way we source data from the crowd, acknowledging the real value of human intuition, but strictly anchoring it to undeniable evidence, frameworks like Codatta are totally pushing the boundaries of what decentralized networks can achieve. It really leaves us to wonder just how powerful community knowledge can become when it's channeled correctly. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the data around you.